In a perfect world, the brand split is pretty bloody great for a whole host of reasons. Theoretically, we get fresh matches and fresh situations that wouldn't have arisen otherwise, and because that means the glass ceiling is also lowered, performers long deserving of a chance finally get that damn chance. The first brand split ended up leading to two extremely diluted rosters, and WWE's fairly hostile behaviour towards the independent scene meant the company relied on those coming through developmental, who were very rarely ready for the big stage. Nowhere was this made more apparent than when you look at who won the WWE title throughout the 2000s. Sure, names like John Cena, Chris Jericho and CM Punk pop up regularly, but there are also some individuals who were clearly the beneficiaries of circumstance. It isn't right to belittle the achievements of anyone, especially in the terrifyingly cutthroat world that is professional wrestling, but we're gonna do it anyway. And in a few years' time, we'll do it again for the current brand split. Why? Because what's right is rarely what's fun. What an asshole I am. My name is Simon from WhatCulture, and this is 10 WWE stars who only won gold because of the brand split. Number 10, Ezekiel Jackson. Ezekiel Jackson had something of a knack for being the final champion. He was the final WWE CW champion, and he would go on to become the final WWE Intercontinental champion of the first brand split era. The personification of domination got something of a push in the dying days of the divided roster back in 2011, breaking out from his fellow members of The Core with freakish displays of strength that included suplexing Big Show and making the great Khali submit in a torture rack. And then he would go on to defeat former stable leader Wade Barrett for the IC Championship at Capital Punishment 2011. The brand split was tailor-made for men like Jackson to break through and win gold. It's no stretch to say that without it, he was never going to reach the heights he did. I mean, maybe he would have done. But let's be honest with ourselves. Number 9, Candice Michelle. For some reason, the brand split led WWE to believe it could sustain two women's divisions when it had already acquired a damning reputation that couldn't even promote one of them. This led to a whole host of wrestlers getting either a Divas or Women's Championship reign that may not have been entirely warranted and certainly wouldn't have happened without trying to maintain two belts. Jillian Hall had a 5-minute run with the title, though that's barely worth mentioning, and there were also a whole host of Flavor of the Month champs, and the least deserving from a pro wrestling point of view may very well have been Candice Michelle. She won the Women's Championship at Vengeance 2007, she held the strap for almost 4 months before dropping it to Beth Phoenix. Michelle was the first individual from the WWE Diva Search to win a title in the company, but if the roster split hadn't been a thing, then it's unlikely she would have held gold at any point. She certainly improved between the ropes. Was it enough to be champion in a division that also included Mickie James, Victoria and Beth Phoenix? I don't think so. Number 8, Orlando Jordan. You could look at this one from a number of different angles. Orlando Jordan was never over enough or good enough inside the ring to justify a US Championship run. When it came to an end with a series of increasingly shorter matches against Chris Benoit, parity was finally restored. His title run was the function of a brand-specific storyline. In order to add a little fuel to the fire of John Cena's ongoing feud with JBL, OJ pinned the champ for the strap. His stint had little to do with his own ability as a wrestler and everything to do with spicing up affairs between Cena and JBL. He was a pawn in their game. The roundabout truth is that without the brand split, JBL would never have become WWE champion, probably, and then Orlando Jordan would never have become a member of his cabinet, and then he would have never defeated Cena for the US title. So there you go, you can wrap that up in a nice little package. Number 7, Juice and Domino. The first brand split saw the dawning of some extremely dark times for WWE's tag teams. The division at the time was just about strong enough to sustain one set of belts, but not two. Doubling the titles meant that a conveyor belt of teams were thrown together and then went on to win championship gold, such as combinations like William Regal and Tajiri, Ric Flair and Roddy Piper, and Hardcore Holly and Cody Rhodes. Don't get me wrong, I love William Regal and Tajiri, but come on. Both Raw and SmackDown also underwent phases where a new team would debut, immediately become the number one contenders, lose their title match, and then they were never seen again. Unfortunately, this wasn't the case for Juice and Domino. The greasy duo arrived in 2007 and almost instantly put an end to Paul London and Brian Kendrick's record-breaking title reign. Once they had defended the straps against the former champions, it quickly became apparent they had no other teams to feud with. The titles were defended on pay-per-view just once against Sergeant Slaughter and Jimmy Snuka of all combos. Throughout this run, however, the Raw tag titles were defended on all pay-per-views, so it was clear who the secondary tag champions were. Without the split, this reign would never have happened. Instead, we could have had a summer of Hardy Boys versus London and Kendrick. Would have been alright. Number 6, Booker T. In 2006, Booker T was experiencing something of a career renaissance as King Booker, putting in arguably the best work of his entire WWE tenure. He was duly rewarded with the World Heavyweight Championship run throughout that summer. Would he have won this belt if the brand split wasn't in place though? It's kind of unlikely. WWE booked themselves into something of a hole by portraying Rey Mysterio so weakly as champion, and when they needed to take the belt off him, King Booker was the only major heel available to do so. Mr. Kennedy had just arrived and it was too early to give it to him, and the next heels on the totem pole were Gregory Helms and Finlay. WWE could have had a babyface defeat Rey for the championship, but that rarely succeeds in developing a decent narrative. In 2006, the heel side of SmackDown's roster was extremely depleted, which was the main reason Booker received this reign. Still, King Booker was excellent. Number 5, Kenzo Suzuki and Rene Dupree. Is this the worst duo to win any of World Wrestling Entertainment's tag team championships? That's another discussion for another day. But even now, here, in 2018, we are still perplexed as to why Kenzo Suzuki and Rene Dupree were teaming in the first place, let alone defeating Billy Kidman and Paul London to win the damn tag team titles. Well, the answer of course lies in the brand split. Suzuki and Dupree were floundering as singles performers on SmackDown, another consequence of having two rosters and a poor developmental system, so they were just thrown together as a tag team. Upon doing this, it just made it clear that the roster was extremely thin, and before you could blink an eye, these two were winning tag team gold. Gotta be kidding me. Number 4, the Great Khali. The Great Khali was indeed the World Heavyweight Champion. That same big gold belt that was proudly held by such legendary names as Ric Flair, Sting, The Undertaker, and David Arquette, graced the shoulder of the Punjabi Playboy in 2007 when Khali won a battle royal following yet another occasion where Edge had to vacate a championship. SmackDown was in fairly dire straits at the time, and one look at the competitors in the battle royal laid bare the depressing reality that the Great Khali may very well be the best option. Batista was the only other main event talent involved, with the majority of the field made up by men such as Chris Masters, Finlay, Kenny Dykstra. At the time, Khali was getting his "has anyone ever handled The Undertaker like this" push, so given the circumstances, a world title run did make sense. However, those circumstances, once again, were a depleted roster due to injury and the brand split. In a just world, Khali would never have held a top title in pro wrestling. Although he is really tall, and that kind of helps. Number 3, Jack Swagger. For the record quickly, I loved Jack Swagger at one point, and when he first won the Money in the Bank, I literally exploded. Well, not literally, but you take my point. What the hell became of him? Something just never clicked with the All-American, not just with fans, but also with WWE themselves, in that it always felt as if management wanted to make him a big star, but they weren't willing to put in the time to make him a big star. As such, Swagger got lost in limbo, existing somewhere between a threat and a joke, without really being convincing as either. Tying into his Money in the Bank victory, he was also kind of the first winner where everything fell apart because of it. Before him, whoever did get their hands on that briefcase had made sense and were believable World Championship contenders. When Swagger did it at WrestleMania 26, he was probably the 9th most likely winner out of 10 people. No one expected him to do this, and when he took an age to unhook the briefcase, it seemed as though he himself didn't think he was supposed to win either. He cashed it in just days later against Chris Jericho, switching brands to SmackDown in the process. From here, Swagger was booked as a joke for his entire run as World Heavyweight Champion, and then he just drifted around after he lost the belt to Rey Mysterio. Would Jack Swagger have been in this position in 2010 if the rosters were united? I don't think you need me to tell you the answer to that question. Number 2, Christian. Now, this isn't going to be a popular choice, and everything in my heart, soul, and brain says that Christian did deserve a World Heavyweight Championship reign. But let's be honest, if Raw and SmackDown were never made to be separate entities, I don't think this ever would have happened. And if you want to be a giant asshole, you can go one step further and state that Captain Charisma wouldn't have been champion at all if Edge hadn't had to retire young due to injury. And again, Christian 100% deserved this run. But did it seem as though he was ever going to get one? No. Despite his obvious talent and popularity, Christian was always going to be a solid, entertaining hand in the upper middle of the card, challenging for titles now and then, and probably winning the IC and US strap from time to time. Christian and Randy Orton had a great feud over the title in the summer of 2011, but the best guess is that Christian won it here because of everything that had happened with Edge. So in many ways, it was a victory of circumstance, even if we all believe that circumstance should have happened anyway. Number 1, John Bradshaw Layfield. The granddaddy of the world champion due to brand split list, this fact was even acknowledged on camera and in canon by Paul Heyman at WWE CW One Night Stand, when Heyman famously told JBL that the only reason he was champion because Triple H didn't want to work Tuesdays. Harsh. A scratching line for sure, but one that's actually difficult to argue with. Despite his ridiculously quick rise to the top of the SmackDown tree, JBL managed to stay WWE champion for almost an entire year. It isn't as if he beat a load of mid-card wrestlers in this time either. He defeated Eddie Guerrero for the title and defended it against The Undertaker, Booker T and others, before dropping it at WrestleMania 21 to John Cena. In many ways, JBL took advantage of the brand split and the fact that WWE had to elevate stars quicker than they should have been elevated. And yeah, it may have taken him 9 or a decade to get there, but when it did happen, it still happened at lightning speed. With the roster as it was at the time, it is practically impossible to believe that JBL would have been world champion without the brand split, although fair play to the man, he did know how to get booed.
Manchester, February 18th and 19th. Defiant Wrestling returns to the Bowlers Exhibition Center. See Defiant Wrestling Champion, The Truth, Austin Aries. General Manager Stu Bennett, formerly known as Wade Barrett. Plus, the Women's Champion, Kaylee Ray. Leader of the Curb Crawlers, Martin Kirby. The Renegade, Mark Haskins. Liverpool's #1, Zach Gibson. The Iron Man, Joe Coffey. David Starr, Jurn Simmons, Primate, and Rampage. Suitable for all ages. Tickets from just £15 at wearedefiant.com.
Gosh, can you believe that person said that about that particular video on that entry? I sure can't. But you should like, share and subscribe below anyway. And also, the people who made this video, they're right here. Go follow them and give them some love. Also, there's more content, probably above my head. Check it out. Or don't. 50-50.